Hey, good morning. I just wanted to take a moment to recap with you what happened Sunday. It's awesome once again to be with you, Church of the Valley, and others of those of you who are watching like this. And I know that this past Sunday there were a lot of moving parts and probably some new faces. And so I just wanted to finish up a sermon series on authority. And as we've marched through the sermon series, kind of leads us to the end here where we're looking at church authority. And the question that we're dealing with is how do we, as in our modern day, how do we deal with church authority? Because there's been so much in the past that to question and be hesitant about. Maybe you have someone who's been taken advantage of in some way by an organization called the church. And so I just wanted to kind of briefly end our time today with that. But to start us off, I just wanted to share with you maybe some context of what happened Sunday. So back in 1517, Martin Luther and the Reformation, right? There was a time when the church was enforcing prescriptions upon people that were not biblical. And Martin Luther came along and said, hey, this is not right. And so what became of that was this reforming time, this phase of the church where we really started to think through everything. And we're birthed, our tradition is birthed out of that. Our tribe from the church is birthed out of that. And so what I'd like to share with you just real quickly is how we now interpret, how we break down that Reformation, how we do church, really. So essentially we have a couple different ways to think about this. One is the ordained ministry section of our church. We have people that are called elders, and they form a body that's called a session that serve for a short time, 3 years, and they serve to lead the church. But they're called elders, and that's actually taken from 1 Timothy 3, and we see Paul's writing to the elders and the deacons, and so you'll see that biblically there. They are ECO, our denomination, essentially says that our elders are to be spiritual overseers, that they are to look for the spiritual maturity of the church, but they're also to help us continue engaging with the mission. A subset of that actually is me, the pastor. I'm no different. I'm considered an elder, and I'm no different other than this. And this is really what I wanted to read to you was Ephesians chapter 4, verses 11 and 12. And this pertains particularly to me and what the pastor is supposed to do. Ephesians 4:11 says this, and he gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the shepherds, and teachers to equip the saints for the work of the ministry. The he there is Christ, and so it's great to know that I'm a gift from Jesus to you, but that's a really humbling idea. And I wanted you to know that today that elders and pastors are the same in the sense that we do watch over the spiritual maturity of the church and the mission. We serve just a little bit different in those sense. And so I'm particularly a teaching elder, one who stands up and teaches as you see. That's what I've been called to do. Now, in addition to that, we also have deacons. As you've seen the past couple of weeks, we've honored them, and they have been birthed out of a ministry of nurture and caregiving for people. But you'll see that biblically found in Acts chapter 6, 1 through 6. The church is growing. The Lord's adding to the number, and you see the deacons added to that. So those are kind of some ordained sections of the church. Then we also honor lay leadership. We call later leadership because we recognize that deacons and elders can't do everything, right? And so God calls people into ministry. And so we have people like staff that are specifically given to us for a time period of the church to help us kind of pierce into the darkness of the culture and do things like children's ministry and youth ministry. And so we're thankful for them. Beyond that, though, we're not an independent church. We're connected to other churches. So we have this thing called a presbytery. We're a part of the Southern California Presbytery. And it's a great thing. I just had my first one here and was acknowledged as your pastor there. And so it's been a great month of celebrating. But essentially, the presbytery biblically is found in Acts chapter 15. You see Paul and Barnabas, and there's some people that are starting to say that people can't be saved unless they're circumcised. And so Paul and Barnabas go to the church in Jerusalem, and you see that they meet there with other apostles, and it's there that the decision, this theological decision, is made. And so presbyteries and synods, the other part of our governance, is birthed out of that. The third part of, like I just mentioned, the third part of our structure is a synod. You may or may not have ever heard that word, but essentially the synod is the one that helps our presbyteries connect together. But they essentially take care of our theology and our mission. They make sure we're on task. They make sure those are biblically done. And this stuff is important just for this, because now what I'd like to do is I'd like for us to struggle with, how do we deal with all this leadership? How do we know that they're legit? How do we know that they're authentic? How do we know that God has truly called them? Well, this is one of the reasons I love ECO, our denomination, this new one that we're in together. And ECO is really concerned about accountability. We think that accountability is something that the church has missed for a long time. And ECO has come along and said, hey, we want to do this, and we want to do this well. And so being a member, being a covenant partner is what we call membership here, because it's a covenant, is one thing. But when you become a leader here at Church of the Valley, we have these things called essential tenets. And you can find this on our ECO website, or maybe perhaps on our own website. But in order for someone to be a leader here at Church of the Valley, we have to actually subscribe to and be okay with these essential tenets. These things are essential, right? It's only 4 pages long, but it's a belief statement that says, this is what we believe to be true. And in order to be a leader at Church of the Valley, this is something that every leader has to agree to. It's a covenant that we take. Now, when someone joins the church, when someone becomes a covenant partner, we believe that their confession in Jesus Christ is all that's needed. And there's this idea that eventually they'll get to the ideas and the belief systems that we think are essential. But when someone becomes a leader, this is why we have things set up like, well, you got to be a covenant partner for a year before you become a leader. It's because we feel like people need to grow in that and come to a certain common understanding of what the Bible has called us to do and be. How to believe, how to obey, right? And those things are found in the essential tenets. That's one form of accountability. You know, another form, a corporate form of accountability is what we call ministry affinity groups. You may have heard of MAG groups, but Church of the Valley is actually connected with other ECO churches, and our session and our leadership are planning to meet with them to keep us on task, to keep us accountable, to keep us on the mission of making disciples who make disciples. So that's another form of accountability, not just individual, but now we have other churches that are in on this, helping us understand the mission of God. In addition to that, we have pastor covenant groups. Did you know that I'm a part of a covenant group with a few other pastors? And we get together and we share each other's stories and we hold each other accountable and we say, hey, this is what Jesus is calling us to do. And this is how I'm struggling with my sin and all these various things. These are just some of the ways here at Church of the Valley we keep each other accountable. But I want you to also know that the session, that board of people made up of elders and me as your pastor, we hold each other accountable. We meet together, we love one another, but we're starting to get together, and my hope and desire for us is to actually become a spiritual community so that we can share with one another and hold each other accountable to the place that God's mission is the priority. We want you to know that we recognize the struggle of trusting institutions, trusting these organizations called churches because of what others have done, but it's our desire to let you know that our desire is that we would be accountable to each other and to God, because this mission of making disciples who make disciples is in a great and eternal value. So you matter to us. We love you and we thank you. We understand that there might be some time that you need to trust us, and we want to live into that. So it's our desire to love you well and to serve you well. And I hope this has been okay. I just want to take a few moments with you this morning to share with you kind of unpacking what happened Sunday. I'm so excited to officially now be Church of the Valley's pastor. I want you to know, before you go, real quickly, I want you to lean a little bit closer to the screen. I want to tell you something. It's a big secret. You may have never heard this before, but I want you to hear this time. You know what? I love you. And so does God. God bless you. Have a great day.